I like that jacket, Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you, sir.
Looks
Good
nice.
morning. Thank you. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Track's over. We got to get that meeting going now.
I was just getting ready to ask you that. Okay, well, I'll get it. I'll work on that next week.
Sounds good to me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that'd be good. Now we don't have that hard cutoff at 11 o'clock. So
Right. What days are going to be good for you?
Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm still doing workouts with some of the runners on Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. So
Okay. I know.
And sorry, I had to email you the book.
No problem.
We had to make sure we got all the housing cases and all that done so we meet the contract. So it was a little later in the process this time.
No problem. You have to do what you got to do. That was more important.
How you doing? This is Jim Glenn.
Good morning.
How's everything going for you? It's good seeing you.
Good morning, Mr. Glenn.
Good morning. How you doing this morning?
Fine.
You look like new money.
That's the word I was looking for earlier. New money.
Well, looks is deceiving, believe me.
Good morning. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good morning. How you doing this morning? This is Jim Glenn.
Hey, Jim, how you doing? It's Raymond Burst.
Life is good.
Yep, we're great.
Dr. Burst, good to see you.
Commissioner Cheney, I'm going to talk fast because I know you have a timeline.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioner Cheney.
Good morning. How is everybody today?
Good.
Good seeing you.
Yeah.
If you drop off. Let's see. And there we go.
Okay, let me call the meeting to order. And I guess the first thing is the confirmation of a quorum, at least based on my count. We do have a quorum present. You can confirm that, Terrence?
We do have a quorum, yes.
Okay, and also confirmation of public notice.
Public notice was sent.
Okay, do we have any public participation today?
There have been no signups to my knowledge.
Okay, so the first item of business is the approval of the minutes for the meeting held on May the 20th, 2021. May I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second that those minutes be approved. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes are approval. So the next item we move to section reports and the executive directors.
Good morning, everybody. I wanted to just start and say welcome to our our meeting before we have our short, I guess, summer break. As far as my report, there have been no budgetary changes since we last met, but I did want to update you all on one thing. I've been working on identifying ways to increase our resources and ways to possibly fundraise. We do have a prohibition against types of solicitation of funding. However, I've been working with a few people on trying to determine a model where we can raise money. And so that's still in the works, but I've just been working with some philanthropic minded groups and ways that we can work towards finding some types of resources without going against any prohibition that's given to us. And so I'll let you all know how those conversations go. And once we get that moving, just something that we can use to help with much needed financial resources. That does get into my next piece of our open positions are still open positions. We're still doing interviews. We took a little break with trying to make sure that we met the housing contract, which is coming up. And so this is our last meeting before the housing contract is due. And so we wanted to make sure we gave all attention that was needed to ensuring we met our requirements. And we should have people in place for our August meeting, and that will also be our new budget cycle. And so we should be able to do more because we'll have a better idea of where we stand. Which, circling back to the fundraising portion, that is a barrier. I have to be honest, in talking to people with the experience that we need and the skill set that we need, being constricted in, even though they are now non-chapter, the non-merit positions, we do still have some issues with being able to be competitive. And so figuring out ways to do that a little better will be helpful. And so we're still working. And once this, sorry, when I pause, I'm letting someone else into the meeting, but finding ways to address that. But we will be able to hire as soon as we move into the next budget cycle anyway, and we're not as focused on clearing these housing cases. There is no staff spotlight, but I did want to circle back on a question a few of you presented about rewarding staff. And after checking with ethics, there's a prohibition against rewards for doing someone's job, but there are ways to celebrate extra work that goes above and beyond. And so the only request or requirement really is if it goes above $25 a person, I would need to know ahead of time so I could ask ethics for approval. That would be voted on in their next meeting, which is July. So that's the only way to look at that. If we did something that was less than that, then there's no need to go up before the board in ethics. So that's just to respond to a few of your questions.
Terrence, does the Ethics Commission meet monthly?
They meet monthly, but it's like us where they have a few times where they don't. So the next meeting, I think she said, was July, the third week in July, I believe.
Okay. It'd just be helpful to know what their calendar schedule is. So as we work through this, knowing when we have to, if we're going to do anything, when we have to get it out there and approved. So
I'll circle back with her and get their full calendar just so I know exactly when they do meet.
okay.
As far as an update on some of the training, we went a little lighter on the training just as we've been working, like I said, to make sure we meet the housing contract. I've done some of the executive branch ethics training and will now serve as our ethics coordinator for the office. I'm also working with Intake and Aaron to do a HUD training because we needed to work on perfecting our complaints when they're filed. And what that means is really just making sure that when the complaints are filed for those housing cases that come in, that we have the best written versions of those complaints. That way we can best meet the needs of the complainants, and also being completely accurate in our reporting. That way we don't have to go back and amend it later, which makes us stay in that timeline that we're required to meet for HUD, because then we don't have to go back and make changes and all of that. We were set to have training tomorrow, but that needs to be moved because they're doing a training with Florida on that same day, and we wanted to have a more specific and tailored training to our office. And so we are going to do a date in early July now. That will be determined probably later today, because I have to let them know that the Florida meeting won't work. And so we'll have a more firm date on that by the end of the day today. Um, there are quite a few outreach efforts that Education and Outreach has in their report. And so I didn't want to be duplicative, but there is a lot going on. There's also been conversations with Louisville Fairness on a joint outreach effort around rights, with them and the governor's office sometime this month. That kind of goes hand in hand with Pride Month, but also 2 days ago was a year to the day of the Supreme Court decision that now enables this office to handle identity and orientation cases in employment, and by extension by the executive order of the president in housing. And so just being some of the outreach is making people aware of that fact. And so has been some there have been conversations with the governor's office and Louisville Fairness about some joint outreach effort before the month ends. We also made modifications to our website to take off the now incorrect information that said people could not file complaints for those reasons. And at the suggestion of Commissioner Worth, we also have added pronouns to the website, or requested they be added. I'm not sure if it's been added yet, but that has been confirmed that they will add that. Just as in, he can explain if he wants on where reasoning for that, but it does create even more of a welcoming space on the website for people who are trying to file a complaint. Just a quick update on mediations. We had quite a few that have settled. We have 4 in the works that should be scheduled for next week. And I'm just very pleased at the pace that we've found in going from intake and entry to scheduling, or then moving on to enforcement. I want to keep updating you all on that, because I know that was a concern with the staff attorney position being open right now. But we are, thanks to Cynthia, moving those just as quickly, if not quicker, than previously. The last 2 updates are related to that. I mentioned earlier about how have been focused really on meeting these housing contract cases. And I just wanted to say that through really good teamwork with everyone from intake through legal, we've been able to meet and exceed the contract, with, of course, the adoption of the recommendations today in the enforcement report. So I'm just very grateful for everybody in the office who's made that happen. And I also wanted to highlight the biweekly conversations that I have with our HUD manager, because it's been really helpful in identifying where we have things that need to be addressed and where we're doing well, which every time I talk to her, which is every other Friday at 11, she does like to mention how well this office is doing right now. And she also likes to mention how great of a job that Erin has been doing in communicating with her and making sure that we are on top of things. So part of those conversations have led to me also getting access to our housing database. And she's sending me now a monthly report of open and closed cases with HUD. And so now I can look at our numbers and our averages and our trends to see what we need to change or address or pay special attention to. Which brings me to the last part of the updates is this July, we will have our 2-year performance review with HUD. And what that means is every 2 years, they come and take a look at the agency, the staff, our production, our processes, our procedures. It's a 2-week long process. And I'll be working closely with our HUD manager to put the report together and she and Aaron and me, and then Brandon is helping with the financial side of it. And it's a scary process, but most people here have been through it multiple times. And I talked to Erin, and she's prepared most of the paperwork already. So we're ahead of the game on that one. We plan on having most things ready to submit in the next 2 weeks, ahead of schedule. And that way, when they do come in or before them coming in, they can address any of those issues that they might see in the paperwork on the front end, which saves us some time. But they have said numerous times now that they have been impressed with our procedural changes that we've made in the past few months and that we seem to be on a good trajectory. And so I'm very confident in this HUD review. And our HUD manager has said as much, that she doesn't expect to see any issues. It just helps them identify where we are and to also see what we might need to change. And then my last piece is more personal. I just wanted to thank everybody in this office and on the commission. Yesterday was 1 year in this position for me. And so I just wanted to say it's been a humbling experience. And it's had its challenges and some very interesting moments, but we've also had quite a few positives and things that have really taken place in this year. The process changes have been good, the drop case age and addressing the backlog, and some of the optimism that's been coming from these meetings and these conversations. And I feel more optimistic than ever. And so I came into this very hopeful and inspired to do the work. And with some of these changes and with you all and some of the spirit of some of you newer commissioners who have come on, I feel very optimistic and invigorated about our direction. And I repeat, I was honored to be selected to be here, but I'm even more honored to work with each of you every day. And hopefully I can continue to support every person who's watching this and who's in this meeting on making this place better and moving this work forward.
Congratulations on your anniversary.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, my friend.
Hopefully I get a jacket like that as a gift.
Terrence, I know that, I'm sorry. Terrence, I just wanted to say thank you. I know that there have been some challenges, and there's been some tough moments, frankly. But thank you so much for sticking with it and continuing to move us forward. We've come a long way in the past year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Terrence, just as a new commissioner, I just want to applaud you as well. I am very grateful for your onboarding skills and for the time you've taken with me personally to help me feel included as a new commissioner and empowered to take some meaningful steps here. So congratulations and thanks for the help you've given me with orientation.
Thank you, and you're welcome, of course.
Looking forward to celebrating future anniversaries, Terrence.
Yeah, Terrence, I'm looking forward to working with you. I haven't done a lot with you yet, but from what I've seen so far, I'm very impressed with your work. And congratulations on your first anniversary. Hope you have many more.
Thank you, Judge.
A follow-up question, Terrence, that's not in the report. I guess some months back, we were looking at trying to lease or find new space. What's the status of that?
I'm so glad you asked. I meant to bring that up. I checked in on that on last Thursday. The final designs are being completed by the interior designer, which I feel like is a weird term for this, but the interior designer is finishing the designs. And so in this month or this coming month, really, since it's almost end of June, they send the designs out to the 5 properties that we have toured and that we've talked to, and then they will provide a cost of what they would say is the need for them to conform to whatever that design is. There are state specific standards that the office has to follow. And so, for example, there's a certain type of carpet that has to be in the offices and a certain type of laminate that has to be in the hallways. So they have to see who can conform to those, and then they get a cost, and then they will send all of those along with the cost to me, and that way we can then see which ones fit and pick from those submissions. um, I pressed them on it a little bit because we are now about 3 weeks to a month behind the schedule that they told me, and they said that we had been bumped for probation and parole. And so they are now supposed to be sending those this month or early next month. So we should have a better idea of where we are when we come back in August. And hopefully it would be great if we had some clear front runners on where we could go, because it's a very long process and I'd rather we get to start moving forward than sitting here and waiting. But unfortunately, the way it works is they have to go by their own processes. And we unfortunately were bumped for probation and parole, which I'm not bitter about at all, if you can tell. But we are in the works. And I'm glad you asked the question because that is something I wanted to update you all on. I expect to have more on that when we come back.
I asked the question because I'm thinking that when we come back from the after the July break, that we probably, if things keep moving the way they are, we'll come back in person and trying to determine, where we are. I know that Commissioner Worth has offered his office or space in his offices for us to have a meeting, but want to make certain we work on that. I guess as you described the process, I say we shouldn't have any expectations that we're going to get in there anytime soon, and probably maybe conceivably not even this year.
The best case scenario, what I heard from our contact in finance would be a build out starting in October, and we'd be able to move in December or January.
So we're in the next year. Okay. Any other questions for any commissioner for Terrence relating to his report?
Terrence, one question is, you were talking about the interviews, and maybe I kind of missed it, but what interviews are you interviewing for, and how many have you had so far?
So let's see. And Aaron might be able to help with this too. We're doing staff attorney, managing attorney, and we need to also jump back into our enforcement officer, because we also have that open. And we've done 11 or so people. There have been some that have moved forward, and then there's the budgetary question of what can we afford to pay, and that does give us some limitations, especially, and I can say from one of the individuals, the ability of what we could pay and what the work entailed didn't quite line up. And so that's something that we're working through. But there's still, I have a list, a large list of quite a few other people to interview coming up, especially now that we have the housing situation under control.
Good, thank you.
Any others? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Terrence, for your report and your response to the questions. Next, we move to budget and personnel. Brandon,
Brandon.
Brandon, you have a hilarious audio issue.
I think one of the filters is on, Brandon.
I think, do you have 2 devices on in your office?
Think she got Alvin and the Chickmunks in there.
I don't understand, Terrence. Is that not how Brandon always sounds to you?
On some days of the week, that's his voice. Maybe he can just come here and do it. Hold on. Sorry.
Good morning.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah, much better.
I couldn't hear myself. I'll have to go back and watch the YouTube video. I was saying we are in the middle of year-end closeout and loading the new allotments for fiscal year 22. After soft close on July 8th, I'll be putting together a more comprehensive financial report for fiscal year 21, which of course I'm sure Terrence will share with you all. And if you have any questions about my report, feel free.
Any questions for Brandon? Okay, I guess I got a couple. One, you referenced that we will have a budget surplus for the year. I'm assuming that is really federal and other funds, and we won't be sending back to the states any money, to the state.
That is correct. Well, very little. I'm trying to minimize that. That's correct. Yes.
Well, I like you to get it to zero.
That's yes. Well, that's the goal. That's the goal. I'm going to get it as close to zero as I possibly can. I usually try to do that. Last year, due to the COVID budget shortage, we had to actually give the state back some general funds as a requirement by an executive order. But this year, yes, zero is the goal, or as close to it as possible.
I guess lines E814 and E815, why did we separate those two?
Okay. I'm in Mary Ann's office. Those are COT charges. Is E815 video conferencing?
Just telephone charges, and E814 is wireless cell telephone charges.
Okay, yeah. So once we got the state cell phone contracts with AT&T, it's automatic. I don't even code those. They just take the money for the state cell phone. Now for the telephone charges, it's just how I've always split it up. I'd have to actually run back in my office and look.
Okay. My other question is the monthly spend rate, at least for the last month, the one where it's like $150,000 a month, that for the month. I'm assuming that's for pretty much how every month. And if I add that to where we are now and we got 1 month to go, we're at $1.9 million. and you add 152,000 to it, it seems like we're over budget. Am I looking at that correctly?
You are, if that was the case. Now, the reason we're not going to be is because this last payroll, the legislature has pushed to July 1st.
Okay.
So that it's in fiscal year 22. They started doing that in like 2011 and they haven't corrected it. So yes, if this last payroll was going to hit as it usually did, we would be negative, but they've pushed that and they pushed the health insurance costs to fiscal year 22.
Okay. Those are my questions. Are there any questions from any other commissioner? Okay, well, thank you for that report, Brandon.
You're welcome.
And next up is the enforcement unit report with Aaron.
Hello, everyone. Before I get started, we do have one pool. It is a withdrawal without settlement. The complainant changed her mind and no longer wishes to withdraw her case. And that is case number 2132-H/04-21-6389-8 Nichols versus Lakeland Arbor Village Security Deposit. That is being pulled, so that will not be closed. With that pool, we have 25 cases for your consideration. We have one reconsideration, 2 administrative closures, 18 no probable cause cases, and 4 withdrawals with settlement. If you have any questions, just let me know.
Questions from commissioners? Okay, and I've got several, Aaron, and I've probably given these to you all earlier. I'm looking at page 27, and we talk about the EEOC cases. I guess my first question is, will we meet the contract amount for that's there?
Our EEOC contract ends September 30th. So we have until through the September commission meeting to make that contract. At the halfway point, which was I think last month, they did what they call where they meet with all the FIPAs, the local agencies, and see where you are in our contract. And we were at 50% midway through the year. Now, is it going to be hard to reach that? Yeah, because we have one of our employment investigators is on maternity leave. So we're actually short an employment investigator. But we got a really good team and we're really pushing, and I think we'll meet it.
Okay. Let me just, I'm on, this is just really an update on, I guess, several open cases in terms of, like on page 33, I think it's 8937E, which was supposed to reference, it was going to close in April. Did it, or is it? And I guess I didn't see it on the list for this month closing. Sort of, it's an update on where we are in terms of moving some of these cases.
I'm pulling up my list. Hold on. Chairperson, what case did you say that case number was again? I'm sorry.
8937E on page 33 of the book.
Okay, that is one of our older cases, and it looks like that the investigator was going to hoping to have it closed by April 2021. But it looks like there's some interviews that are scheduled in June, so that got pushed back to June. So it looks like that projected closure will be sometime in July.
Okay. Without going through the others, there's several on page 33 and page 34, which I think really we need an update on. I'll send you or Brandon, Terrence, after the meeting, the number of those cases that there's some questions on. On page 151, which is Harold versus Carlisle and Bray, the write-up, there seems to be a conflict on the dates. The person supposedly began work on November the 27th, 2019, but the accident they reference occurred on March 21st, 2019, which would have been before they were employed.
Let me pull that case up. Okay, that is a typo. They began their employment in November 27th, 2018. I apologize for that.
Okay. Okay, I'll just send you my other questions, and it's really other questions are really around updates in terms of where we are on various cases. At least when a date is given, I'm just trying to figure out what has happened, transpired since we've now passed those dates. Those are all my questions. Any other commissioner, any questions about any of the items in the enforcement unit report and their case recommendations? Hearing none, can I have a motion to accept and approve the staff's recommendations as set forth?
So moved.
Motion.
Second?
Seconded.
Okay, it's been moved and second that the staff report and case recommendations be accepted and approved. All those in favor signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Aaron. So next we go to education outreach. Mary Ann.
Good morning. You all have that report and the activities that we've been involved with over the last month. As you can see, some of them occurred right after we wrote the report, but everyone has been able to attend or participate in all the activities that were listed. So with that said, do you all have any questions? If not, I thank you all very much.
No questions? None. Let's move to the legal unit report. Colt.
Good morning, everyone. You have my report, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Any questions? Anyone on the legal unit report?
Thank you.
Here, thank you. So hearing none, we'll go to committee reports for which there aren't any. Is there any new business?
Commissioner, or I'm sorry, Chairman Burse.
Yes, go ahead.
In terms of new business, I don't know. And once again, I'm a new commissioner, so if you need to educate me, please feel free to shut me down. But I'm just curious if there's been, if any of the other commissioners have been keeping up with the news headlines out of the Lexington Herald Journal and the Louisville Courier Journal about a particular children's home refusing to sign a PCC contract based upon some objections to anti-discrimination language. I'm curious if anybody else is on the loop there. I know that it has generated a lot of discussion in my line of work in child welfare and in working with the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. And I'm just curious if there's any action steps that this Human Rights Commission might be able to undertake in that regard, because it appears that the conundrum is simply based around contract language around anti-discrimination specific to sexual orientation and gender identity. Is that an appropriate thing that this commission might be able to discuss and address?
Terrence, your thoughts?
I do wonder, and that's a great question. I think there, obviously, with anything like that, given our charge in 344 and what we can and can't do as a body, is a little bit more limited. However, that also doesn't mean that we have to completely stand on the side. I'm happy to entertain a conversation about if there were any stance or position statement or whatever, putting out some type of statement or something like that about where we sit. As far as any other actions besides a public stance or something of that nature, I'm not sure there's much else under our enabling statutes that gives us the authority to intervene or anything, but I do think that we can have some type of position. But like I said, I'm happy to entertain any conversation of where we think that we should be, or what steps should be taken.
I would be really interested, Terrence, in continuing a conversation. I am really troubled about the dynamic. I've had several conversations with local legislators based in northern Kentucky, and there just seems to be such a misinformation about this contract language. And it just seems to boil down quite simply around one particular one private child well provider who's contracted with the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, who is refusing to sign this state contract simply because of objections, I would say veiled in religious liberty concerns. And they would like to have a particular waiver so that they're not committing to sexual orientation, gender identity language protections in the state contract. For me, I just feel like that is such an opportunity for this commission to come in on the right side of the equation. I am just, in my work with abused and neglected children in the custody of the state, there is a disproportionate number of Kentucky youth who are homeless and who are in state's custody specifically because of their sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression status. And we are not in a position, I don't think, as a Commonwealth, to ignore that issue and that dynamic. We have had such high numbers of children coming into out-of-home care. And there are so many religiously based providers providing child welfare in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. The vast majority of them have no qualms in signing these contracts that ban discrimination based upon SOGI, sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. I would just really welcome our review of this topic and to make sure that if we are able, that we bring a voice to this equation. I know that the legislators in Northern Kentucky, at least one has mentioned to me that she felt somewhat pressured to sign a letter of support for this particular provider without knowing all of the facts. And so there's a lot of misinformation and I'll use the word ignorance in the truest and purest sense of that word. It just seems to be an invitation for us to really embrace this commission's role in advancing equity, diversity, inclusion, and all of those positive traits that I think we hold dear to our hearts.
You know, just listening to you, Commissioner Worth, I guess having read the newspaper, having listened to the media reports, you just shared some facts with me that I did not know, okay? You know, the way you read the media, you would think that this one organization had the majority of the children across the state, and if they don't, and if their contract isn't renewed, suddenly we lose a major provider for it. And you know, based on what you said, that's not true, because there's several providers across the state that needs to be they're there. You know, I would maybe what we need to do is to gather facts and information, put out a statement regarding what the facts are, and then tying it back to our obligation under the civil rights statute of the state. And particularly given the Supreme Court decision and the executive order, which you mentioned earlier, Terrence, is that, you know, we're now, because of what we do in the housing area, are now dealing directly with and accepting complaints related to those areas, that we should at least say something. And I think this is probably more in line with what you and I, some of the discussion you and I have had before about the commission being more proactive, making statements and level and engagement. I don't know what other commissioners' thoughts are, but I'd like to hear those.
Where is the home located?
Rabbi, it is a particular private provider. It is religiously affiliated, and it has several locations around the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
So the one concern that comes to mind is I'd want to do it in conjunction with, or with the knowledge at least of, any local human rights commissions that might be in that area. I know especially with Louisville and Lexington, whenever we come near something, there's a lot of people who feel that their toes are being stepped on. In Judaism, we teach in a place where there's no men, stand up and be a man, that if no one else is saying something, you should say something. That's not always every commission's point of view. So I would just say that we should do it, anything we should do in conjunction with the local human rights councils, so as not to have any bent feelings there.
I understand, Rabbi, and I totally agree. This story has made national news. It was covered by the Associated Press. And, you know, I won't use veiled language here because it's a matter of public record, but it's the private provider is Sunrise Children's Services, which is a religiously oriented provider. However, it is not the only religiously oriented provider in child welfare services in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. There are multiple faith-based child welfare organizations doing this kind of work, none of which have asked for waivers related to discrimination language. The other, and I feel strongly about this because I run the largest child welfare providing organization in Northern Kentucky in the bluegrass region of the Commonwealth. And I can tell you, we've actually received children from this particular provider, and the stories of the language that they were subjected to simply based upon their sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, I think would make any commissioner's head turn here. So I feel like maybe I'm trying to lead too much of a prophetic stance, but I just think that if the commissioners were well versed about the particular history of this one organization specific to gender expression, gender identity, and sexual orientation, I think that all of us would have some major concerns, especially with this vulnerable population of minors who are literally at the mercy and in the custody of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, with very few people being willing to act as advocates and allies for them.
If I may ask a question about this agency, what is their track record, or are there any issues or complaints already out there as it relates to them, whether it's regulatory or just social in nature? Do we know?
Yeah,
other than what you have just said?
Commissioner Smith, it's all available on public record. If you do a Google search, you'll note that this particular organization has been involved with litigation in terms of harassment of employees that identify as LGBTQ. I've been in this business since 2010, working at Children's Home of Northern Kentucky. One of the first things we had to deal with as an organization was the fact that Sunrise Children's Services was in the news regarding the dismissal of an employee simply because she was identified as LGBT, part of the LGBTQ community. During that litigation, the CEO, who was an ordained minister in the denomination that runs that particular organization, suggested that they rethink their hiring and firing policies, and was dismissed by the board for that comment. Later, the organization got caught up in litigation with the ACLU based upon forced religious proselytizing of children in state's custody who were placed in that particular organization. Namely, they were being required to go to the denominational religious services, even if they identified as coming from a different family of faith or no particular faith. So there is, and that's all available. The particular legislator that I most recently had a conversation was in the dark about all of those dynamics. All she knew was she was brought a letter and asked for her signature with her particular party. And it was framed as the present administration was picking on religious providers because the particular cabinet, the administration and the cabinet was going after religious providers. And that simply is not the experiences of people like me and other CEOs who are providing child welfare services across this Commonwealth. The AP article that I mentioned previously even quoted the CEO of St. Joseph Orphanage in Louisville. I know Abby Drain, the CEO of Euspiritus Brooklawn Bellwood, has some major concerns about this dynamic. And yet the feeling is that perhaps people in decision-making seats are just merely unaware of this current dynamic that's been in the news since late May.
And I guess you just posted on, I guess in the chat, there's a Newsweek article that says there are over 9,000 children within the Kentucky system, and Sunrise places less than 800 of them. So you read the news article, you think that Sunrise really had probably 7,000 or 8,000.
Yeah, and once again, Commissioner, I'm not trying to badmouth any provider, and the numbers in Kentucky are not pleasant numbers. I'm not trying to chase anybody out of the market. We need all hands on deck. But truthfully, that's where my problem is personally with the dynamic that's been underway. We literally can't afford to turn away people who are willing to devote their lives as child care workers, residential treatment specialists to help address these children simply because of who they love. And what's more, I think we have not had a great track record in Kentucky. In Kentucky, for example, we have not even asked basic questions of youth coming into state's custody about their sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. So if anybody wanted to know what is the specific number of youth who identify as LGBTQ, the Commonwealth cannot answer that question because it has heretofore simply had that off the radar thing. We know that there is a disproportionate number of children of color in state's custody, and we know there's a disproportionate number of LGBTQ youth. And we have to address not only the adverse childhood experiences that these children have, but the adverse community environments that's giving birth to these ACEs. And so, as you can tell, I feel very passionately about this. I don't want to blur any boundaries with this commission, but if there is an opportunity to have Terrence to do some additional research and to see what options there are, and then to bring that back to the commission, I would certainly welcome that. That contract is supposed to be signed by June 30th. It's not been signed yet. And what is really concerning to me, because I am a person of faith, I spent 10 years as an ordained priest. The biggest concern that I have is somehow this mixed messaging that we have, that you can't violate the rights of religious freedom, but somehow that has to be balanced with the needs and client-centered, trauma-informed focus of children and young people who don't have a medical illness or a diagnostic illness other than being gay or lesbian, bisexual, transgender, or queer. So I'll be quiet now, but I'm really grateful that you allowed me, Chairman, to bring that topic up.
Any other comments from any other commissioners?
Thank you. This is Jim Glenn. Thank you for the information. I am going down to the library after this is over and look this stuff up because I was not aware of it either.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate educating yourself on this. It's very troubling to me. And I just don't like the way this is being framed, because I think the way it's being framed is it's religious rights versus non-discrimination activity. I don't think that those two topics are enemies of each other. And I know that there is a better way of doing this, but I'm not seeing many people in the Commonwealth of Kentucky who are aware of this dynamic and who are willing to speak out on behalf of these young people who often have continued adverse childhood experiences related simply to their sexual orientation, often even at the hands of the providers who are supposed to be helping them.
I will say thank you for bringing that up, especially, and I don't know if you were going to say this, Chairperson, but I'm happy to work with you, Commissioner Worth, and anyone else who wants to get to the facts and kind of get a little bit more research and an outline of where things sit. I also wanted to look into our history of cases against them before we say, not before we say anything, but just to keep that in mind when and if we do, or when we do something. I know we have had some cases against them, and so I want to be mindful of that. But then after doing all of that, I'm happy to put something together that we can all work through and see where we sit on it and before it goes out anywhere. But happy to work with anyone on that, and we can follow up and have a meeting, Commissioner Worth, and talk a little bit more about all of this and some of the historical data and information.
I would appreciate that. I mean, obviously, this is a timely topic, and as I said, the contract is supposed to be signed by June 30th. I know there's been a lot of pressure placed upon the cabinet, and I know that I would say every CEO and executive director of the child welfare organizations I've spoken with are really concerned about this. I would just welcome the input of other commissioners to see what we might be able to do, if anything. Terrence, I'm glad to work with you on this, if Chairman Burse is open to that.
I'm open to that. I guess, as I sit here and think, I think there's maybe two or three pieces to this. One is really the getting the facts and the factual information to inform us about this, so that we have a factual basis based on real facts, not the hyperbole of people who've put things out in the media, and then taking that in the context of what our policies or procedures have been, and particularly the things that we enforce. And juxtapose that against that. And then the final piece is, and I hadn't thought about that, Terrence, which is any potential conflict because of cases that we may have had. But again, I'm not so much concerned about the latter as much as I am that if in fact, we're now enforcing laws that relate to this in terms of it being legal, being required, being protected, and that we have, in fulfilling our mission, fulfilling our statutory obligation, have to be able to speak. But what I would ask you to do is to get with Commissioner Worth and put together some factual information first for us, get that out to the commissioners, and we can see what we can do. I understand, June 30th is, but now 13 days away, so it's coming pretty quick, and I'm not certain whether we can do anything formally by June 30th. But again, I think given what is taking place, it'd probably be worth this commission at some point making a statement regarding this. The others, and I thought you were going, was related to is reading the stories about the archdiocese and the lawsuit filed by an unmarried teacher who was pregnant, who was in fact terminated. And I think that, if in fact there's a basis under our statute for that claim, for that, I'm not certain that they ever reached out to us in terms of before it was filed or any of those things. But I think that, in the current environment where lots of things are being said and done, I think this commission has a role to play in the protection of human and civil rights. And we ought to rightfully assert ourselves in that role, in that place. And I think that's what the people of the Commonwealth are looking for from this body, who supposedly has the expertise and the knowledge and the skills to do it. And we need to fulfill that.
Chairman Burst, thank you so much. I appreciate those words very much. And I see Commissioner Cheney is interested in participating in the effort. Just by way of one last update, we have invited Children's Home of Northern Kentucky has invited Commissioner Miranda Straub. She is the commissioner of the Department of Community-Based Services, which is the branch of the cabinet that oversees these children who are in state's custody. So she is coming to Children's Home tomorrow to spend 4 hours with us. We are inviting various legislators to join us as well, so that we can talk about our particular approach. And I'm not trying to do a commercial for Children's Home of Northern Kentucky. I'm simply trying to paint a picture that there is a vastly different approach to the topic of sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression in the care of vulnerable youth. Children's Home is the only agency in the Commonwealth of Kentucky to have the highest certification by the National Human Rights Campaign Foundation for our approach to LGBTQ cultural competencies in healthcare environments. So we're trying to spend some time educating the department commissioner of DCBS and our local legislators on what is the way to navigate this topic and to make sure that the center of our focus is the client and the child, not particularly the political desires of the adults who are running the child welfare institutions.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I think we got some direction of how we're going to proceed and what we're going to do. So let's go along with that. Again, any commissioners, any other commissioner with any reaction, comments, or anything? Okay. Hearing none, is there any other new business? Okay, hearing none.
Commissioner Burris,
Yes, sir.
I wanted to offer commendations to our fellow Commissioner Devine on his new position. We saw it in the news clipping, but I just wanted to bring that up in our meeting today. Just a word of commendation to him.
Okay.
Great work.
I appreciate that. I'm sorry I got my camera off. I'm driving, so I figured it. I keep my camera off, but I truly appreciate that. Definitely looking forward to the work. 2020 was a difficult time for all of us, and for my family, and for us personally. And so 2021, I'm just trying to figure different ways that I can get into the fight and make things better. So I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Well, we all appreciate your work on the battlefields in many different arenas and many different approaches, but all towards the same goal. So thank you for the work that you do in the service, and also thank you for making the time to serve on this body as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Our next scheduled meeting is for August the 19th, 2021. And, as I said, depending on how things unfold over the next 2 months, that may very well be an in-person meeting, which will be the first in-person meeting since, I guess December. And so we'll be looking forward to and trying to figure that out. But place on your calendar for any topics that you would like to have discussed at that meeting. Please send those on to Terrence, and we'll add them to the agenda and get prepped for it. If that's hearing nothing from anyone else, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Jim Glenn, motion for adjournment.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the meeting be adjourned. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thank all of you for your time in this meeting and to the work that you're doing on behalf of the commission. Thanks to the staff who are continually to improve and enhance the work of the commission. We all really appreciate what you're doing, and look forward to continuing to work with you as we move civil rights agenda, human rights agenda ahead in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Again, thank all of you. And I now yield back to the rest of your morning.
Thank you.
Take care. It's good seeing you.
Yeah.
Thank you.